Welcome to the Heat of Command podcast, mastering the art of fire service leadership.
Where we, your hosts, aim to teach you how to use introspection and self-reflection to be your most authentic, genuine self, leader, and human being.
And now, here are your hosts. This is Kyle Matusik.
And Carrie Henderson. Thanks for joining.
Welcome back. And I have to say, just right off the bat, getting started, Kyle, this is not my normal intro. I hate daylight savings. I hate it. It is dark here and it's 5:20 and it's ruining my life.
I mean, they're talking about getting rid of it. So
I know.
But I was telling my wife.
Observes it.
But however, like this is the normal time. The spring ahead is what we would lose. This would still be the normal time.
No.
Yeah.
You just ruined my day completely. Anyways,
fun fact for the
listeners, day. You know, I just want people to know right off the bat what kind of frame of mind I'm in when we get started. So today we're going to talk about communication, and that is a super broad topic, and we're going to try to narrow it down some, but it's just been on my heart lately about communication in the fire service and just in life in general. And I just feel so passionately or so strongly about communicating in person or communicating on the phone and talking things out, and how much better life would be for all of us if we were willing to just have a conversation with someone and also be willing to be on the receiving end of communication, to be a good communicator in receiving that information too, because I'm dealing with some stuff at work, and all of it could just have been so much smoother and so much less drama if folks would just talk to each other. But what do we do in the fire service? Instead of going to the person that you have whatever conflict or issue with, you tell every other firefighter you know instead. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And before you know it, you're 2 weeks into some kind of conflict where if you would just pick up a phone or find somebody at shift change, or if it's somebody on your shift, just say, hey, man, like it gets worse and worse and worse when you don't have those conversations with folks. And I have spent like the last few weeks at work just literally being a social worker. I've literally just been a peer mediator or a group mediator for so much stuff, and I don't mind that. I really don't, because I feel like I can facilitate conversations with folks, but I just want people to like take ownership of communication and really think about, okay, I'm pissed off at this guy or this girl because of da 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 da. Instead of letting that fester and you tell everybody else, you just go to that person and say, hey, man, I really didn't love that you did this. Can we talk through that? Or, hey, this is how I think this should be going. Tell me why you think it should be going like this, and let's make this better. But instead we just talk crap, and we never, and you know, it always comes back to that self-reflection and that blame game thing that we've talked about 1,000 times. It's just, no one takes any ownership of, it's like, maybe it's not about me. Maybe it's, you know, they've got something else going on. And I don't know, I'm all spun up about it today.
You're fired up. I'm just going to sit here and watch and listen. Yeah, before we got on, we were talking, and I think it's just so much selfishness and self-interest that everybody's just worried about themselves. And they're afraid to hear any criticism from one side, good or bad, right? And then how to just have a conversation about things that might not be, pat on the back all the time, but maybe somewhere where you're lacking or some things that it might just be a misunderstanding. But it's like the tendency is, and as we mature and grow up, I think a lot of that changes, right? Because I remember times where, I'd fly off the handle, or you don't want to listen. You already have your response made up while the person's still talking. And if you're doing that out there, you're not listening, right? So it's like, I was there. I get it. But the one thing we always talk about in the fire service and emergency services everywhere, anytime there's a big incident or drill, the first thing we always talk about on everything, what's the first thing that breaks down is communication. What's the first thing that breaks down within the four walls of the firehouse? Communication. Like, it's on every single level. And we know it's a problem, but we do nothing to solve it. Like, nothing. And nobody wants to.
And our relationships, our personal relationships. I mean, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mom, your sister, whoever, it's always communication that's causing issues.
Yeah. And it's, we, in our industry, people throw the words around humility and humble and blah, blah, blah. And like, that's part of it. Like, being able to listen to the hard things that people have to say to you and maybe say, you're sorry, or how can I do better? Or I didn't realize that was the perception of me, and we've talked a lot about this before, is you may have this idea of how you think what you're saying or doing is coming off as a good thing, but everybody around you thinks it sucks, right? And it's not what you think, it's what everybody else thinks. And that's like where the ego is that you need to break. And that's going to allow for better lines of communication, I think, in terms of just everything. And I think the other big thing is honesty and trustworthy, right? Again, in our industry, we just throw around a lot of terms, I think. And, people talk a lot, but actions speak so much louder than words. And when you have an honest, trustworthy relationship with anybody, it allows for better lines of communication. So if you don't have those lines of communication, you don't feel like you can go up to anybody in your organization and be honest with them, there's not honesty and trustworthiness there. I can guarantee that. And that's unfortunate, and I think a lot of times there might be apprehension just because of the culture, they claim it's paramilitary, but, people get promoted and they get in these positions and, they think they're almighty and powerful and, they still use the fear-based leadership and people can't approach that. And if you can't hear anything as a higher ranking, administrator within your organizations from younger people, man, that's where your communication problems are starting, is right there. And you should be able to listen because, again, it's an educational opportunity. They might not understand everything going on in the background. They might not need to understand everything going on in the background, but maybe it's a learning opportunity. It's growth. It's, wow, somebody wants to be open and honest with me. Let's have the conversation. I'm not there to say that a probie is going to come in the chief's office and be like, you suck, chief, right? No, I'm not talking about that, but to ask honest questions and challenge some industry norms, like allow for open, critiquing and communication fosters an environment where people want to collaborate and be a part. When you have it like a dictatorship and it's this way and communication can only go one way, like you're destroying an organization.
Yeah. And last week I talked about, I had been listening to the five dysfunctions of a team. And that's the very first thing that they talk about is that trust, that in a group, you have to have trust within the group to be able to have conflict. And you have to have conflict to be able to have any sort of resolution to anything you're trying to work through. So, and this doesn't have to be like corporate level or executive level groups. This starts in your fire station with your crew. If your crew doesn't trust each other enough to have conversations about things that need to be worked out, conflict, personality conflicts about the way performance is going, anything like that, there's got to be trust. And I feel like a lot of times I can just walk into fire stations and see who trusts each other and who's having these able to have these conversations. And I can tell crews that are be running like a dictatorship and they can't voice their opinion on anything and they're afraid to say anything, and that's dysfunctional, and that you don't grow, and people live in fear coming to work and they walk on eggshells, and it starts with your crew and building trust amongst your crew that people can, in a professional and in a way, you can't just be like, well, I trust everybody in this group and I'm going to tell everybody they suck. It's still right. You've got to know how to deliver those messages, but people need to start being able to talk about that stuff and work through issues and have conflict. Conflict isn't a bad thing if it's
right. It's a normal
coming out of trust.
Normal part of life, right? And unfortunately, and I think this is cross industry wide and probably multiple industries, but those people that are doing that fear-based leadership that you have to walk on eggshells for and have created these types of environments, they're patting themselves on the back. Like, this is the way it's supposed to be. That's what I grew up in. And so it's like hard to change that. And to navigate that, like we've talked about that before too, like I just don't know the right answer. It's challenging and you have to be resilient. And I understand that could be a majority of your organization, but therein lies the challenge. And you just got to wait till they retire. I'm sorry. Or find somewhere else to go. But that's the unfortunate part when you get into cultures like that it's so entrenched. It's like we could sit here and talk about this stuff all day. It is never going to change in some organizations. And you can see that. And, for our listeners, like I get that. I get it. And that's where the challenge is. But, someday, hopefully that change can occur and start looking at, the broader picture of the needs of what an organization and a good functioning organization looks like and what leadership really is, not hiding behind a title and some bugles, right? It's so much more than that. And it all starts with what we're talking about today is communication and how to communicate with people. And, overall, I just don't think it's done very well.
Yeah. And I use email a lot, and just to change topics a little bit, but I use email a ton at work.
I'm ready to go into emails.
Oh, okay. It's just the nature of my job, but it's more for transactional things. Like, are you available? Or here's this new program. Here's the information you need to know. But man, if I need to have a conversation with you, or we need to work something out, or I'm upset, or like I need to address a performance issue, I am coming to your station or I'm calling you on the phone, because you can't deliver messages like what we're talking about without any context, without any emotion, because that's how email and texts are. And I see so many people, like, chief level folks blast an email about some performance thing. And it's like, whoa. Can we have a conversation about this first? So, like, for me, if I'm not pleased with something, I want to go have a conversation with you about it. Because I want to know your side of it, right? And I want to know why you made that decision or what was going on at the time. And then I want to be able to tell you in a way and watch your reaction. Because like I said, like we've said before, when you're delivering news like that, it's not just about, discipline. It's about performance behavior. It's about behavior changes. So, like, I need to watch how you're responding to what I'm telling you or asking you about, so I can continue to deliver a message that you can listen. Right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just get so, so many people will not have a conversation. They won't pick up the phone. And I immediately am like, I need to call this person. And I'll call and be like, hey, tell me what you're thinking. What was going on? Oh, I didn't know that was going on with you. I didn't know all these other details. Thank you for explaining. Hey, maybe next time I would have preferred this to have happened. But now I know all this other information, instead of me just firing off an email or a text message and being like, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you screwed up, or don't do that, or even worse, not addressing it at all, which is the worst communication strategy of all of it.
You're fired up, dude. I love it.
It's a time change.
Wow. And I'm feeling it over here, even though we're 1,500 miles away. Yeah, on the emails, since we're just talking basic communication skills, here's some, like, off the cuff, don't do. Caps. Do not ever put caps in an email. If you have something stern to say, caps, like, come on, how old are we?
Yeah.
Especially if it's coming from a higher level. Like, no, that is just not good communication, right?
Yeah. If you have something to say in caps, it should probably be said in person.
Right. Words like effective immediately, on my orders, like, come on. Let's move on from what we think we are, because it's not that. And that just shows power and ego, not humility, not being humble, not anything else. It just shows being like power, and that's it. And it just comes off as so, that's the only word I could come up with is, like, why, But yeah, on my orders, if these aren't followed, progressive discipline shall be whatever. Like, no, we know. That's not, we're not, that stuff does not need to constantly be reiterated. If you have an order to put out, cool, put out an order, a memo, you know, and give it down the chain of command. It shouldn't come from the fire chief. Like, send it out so we could sit and talk about it. Hey, the chief put out this order. This is effective today. Let's read it. Let's train on it. Any questions? Cool. And you could complain about, if it's my company, you could complain about it to me. Cool. I'm not going to let it go up. Complain all you want. Cool. I'll listen. But I'll tell you why, right? I'll give you the whys behind everything. But yeah, caps really, really piss me off. Like, don't do that. And secondly, if you're going to send an email out and it's, I don't want to say disciplinary in nature, but if it is meant for one person who did something,
Yeah.
do not send it out to the entire department. Go address that person. Like, that is just crazy to me. Like, you can't even communicate with the one person that everybody knows who this is meant for. Everybody knows.
Yep.
Like, go have that conversation. Instead, everybody gets an email with caps on my orders and and it's like, are you kidding me? Like,
Right.
really?
What is that?
What
Punish
is that?
the masses instead of discipline the one or something? Isn't that a phrase?
Yeah, it's
Is that a phrase or something?
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
And there's like I think there's people within every organization who are probably good communicators. I'm not saying I'm a good communicator. I've gotten a lot better at emails, and that was due to some formal education that I took. Because I'm sure I did caps in my emails at one point, and I took a technical writing class, and it was like, my
emails now.
My wife, responds to emails and she needs to give all these details. And I'm like, no, one sentence. Like, if we can't go to something, no, sorry, we can't make it. Period. Done. Like, she has to explain everything. But I'm sure I was the same way. You took this class, like, when you're sending in emails, it's just like, get your point across. Period. Done. And send it off. And if it needs more than that, that is an in-person conversation, and using the caps and all this other stuff. But to go back to, there's strengths and weaknesses in all your organization. Find your good communicators. Find people who are good in this, and who cares if they're a lower rank than you? Have them help you. Like, I think it's mind-boggling to me that as people move up the chain, they cannot take any advice or learn from people younger than them. Like, it's just like all of a sudden you get promoted and you have this knowledge and educate, like, just one day you didn't and now the next day you do. Like, that doesn't even make sense. And as you move up, I think it's more imperative that you continue to learn from younger people and how they communicate and how they do things. Because if you're stuck in your old ways, it's not going to be effective. And we see that in society today, that most places cannot communicate with the younger people. Right? It's not just the fire service, it's everywhere. They just blame them for the way they are, and that's it, and this and that, and they cannot communicate with them. Right? And like, what are you doing to improve that? Nothing. We're just going to keep blaming them. So it's like, you got to go out and look in your organization and find people who are strong, take rank out of the picture and use them. Like, you could train them, they can train you. It's a cool thing. Like, that's awesome. That's how you become progressive and grow an organization, not, well, I'm this position, so I know more than you by default. No. And it's just utilizing your people, and I did think somehow, somewhere, the wires got crossed, and it's like, you can't even explain it to some people, that aren't in our industry, and it just doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to me anymore, and it's unfortunate, because I look at like the fixes and all these things, and in my mind they're simple, but to break these characteristics of people is like, you're talking to a wall. Like me trying to bring this up and have this conversation in my organization, and I'm better off talking to a wall. Like, it's nothing will get through, and it's unfortunate. Like, I'm not here to say that I'm better than anybody or anything. I just want to have a conversation. Tell me where I suck. Like, I don't care, and help me. Like, you could tell me where I suck, but then help me improve there, and vice versa, So yeah, there's a lot of work that's got to be done for sure. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting, because I get not a lot, but I get folks that will come to me and they're like, we need you to help facilitate this or fix this between people, or, there's these group dynamics that aren't working out. We need you to, intervene, or, hey, I'm not getting along with this person. Can will you fix that? Like, and I look at them and I'm like, what, like, I know I'm a battalion chief and you're coming to me because I'm the battalion chief, and and what, for whatever reason, you're coming to me. We're like the same age,
Yeah.
like with the same, with some of these folks, like the same amount of time in the fire service. I happen to be a battalion chief, but it's like, I don't have any superpowers. Like, I have the same life as you have had, and my rank is higher. And so if you needed me there present for that reason, I get that. But you have the same ability to have the same experience and practice the same stuff that I'm talking about doing. It doesn't have to be from a battalion chief. So it's just interesting. I always look at people, and this is like, I think, because my husband says this all the time, so now I've like picked it up. It's like, you're a grown person. You're a grown adult. Like, go have a conversation with that person and work it out. Like, if you need me there, is like, whatever, but I feel like I'm always like this peer mediator, I'm set up in office hours, like,
Yeah.
and you just come in with your adversary and whoever it is, and we just work it out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it goes on with the culture, right? Just the culture of our industry of having these conversations, and like a lot of places stick seniority in terms of rank as well, right? So if you're a senior person, like, you have a higher rank than a probie or whatever. So there's just this apprehension, I think, of especially younger people to voice their opinion and talk and have conversations. I always I mean, it is unfortunate. We call this industry the brother and sisterhood, and I'm like, no. Like, no, because if we can't even communicate with each other and have open dialogues about things, like, explain to me how that is brotherhood or sisterhood. Like, really, explain that to me. So like I said, the more that me and you have done this and continue down this road, and we have these conversations, the more, and just, I guess, just growing up and maturing and all these things, you just see that people just love to throw around terminology. And at the end of the day, there is no action that backs that up. And it's like, okay, I think as an industry, like, here's a public service announcement. Stop saying what you are or what you think you are and start doing it. Like, I don't care. If you say that you're this, you say that we're a brother sisterhood, you say that, we honor, our top values are humility and honesty, and don't care anymore. Just start doing it. Like, put the money where your mouth is. And that right there, I think we would see a lot of change, but that's hard for people to do.
Oh yeah, very hard. That's very hard.
And I just don't understand, I guess, the root cause. Like, as we're sitting here having this discussion, I'm trying to think, like, well, where did it all go wrong, and why?
Everybody got a trophy.
I don't know if it's that. Like, I see that.
Just
kidding. You're barely part of that generation too, just so you know.
I know.
I'm just saying. And most of the seniors, like, the fire chiefs and recently fire chiefs, they're the ones who raised us. So.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
Anyways.
No.
So they're the ones who gave us the trophies, and then they complained about it, right?
I got a trophy. I got trophies.
It's all right. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's because I think
is it the text generation took us, texts and emails really, took away a lot of that on the phone or in-person communication that you had to have before the digital age.
I don't even think it's that, because I think our younger people, and I think me and you have experienced this when we go out and speak, I think they're eager for this. I think they're eager for this type of communication and being able to have these types of conversations with anybody. I think they're just afraid to, because of our culture, right? And rightfully so. Like, I get that. I think, a lot comes, I think, just with...
Oh, I think I have an idea too. Sorry, go ahead.
A breakdown of, this... Early on, we talked about emotional intelligence and and it's something that me and you talk about a lot. And I just think that it wasn't in our industry. And then slowly but surely it started to trickle in. And people didn't know how to react to it. And then it's getting kind of louder. And I think eventually it'll change over. But I think for the most part, like, I don't think there is in general, right? I'm just saying in general. There's just no oomph to develop human beings, right? It's all about the job. And we got to get better at forcing door. And it's so black and white on the task oriented of being a firefighter that nothing else matters. And to me, that's just unfortunate because there's so much more that goes along with that. And I just think it's a lack of people being able to have empathy and compassion because they don't even know what that is. And that is sad, right? And that is unfortunate. And typically when we don't have empathy and compassion, right, that is because of something that has happened to us. That's how we were raised. And then, this just steamrolls into now we start talking about empathy and compassion. People think we need a safe space, blah, 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 blah. But I think that in and of itself, if we go down to the root of it all, I think that's where it starts, right? And it's just lacking that emotional capacity to really act out, like I said, those hot words that we say, act out the trustworthiness and being humble and all this stuff. It's easier to hide behind the terms and say them instead of act them out because we might just not know how those feel because we've just been emotionally incompetent for so long. And I think as the industry gets younger, they are not emotionally incompetent. And that's where the clash is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we 100% are behind the 8 ball on emotional intelligence. And it just came to me too that I think sometimes, and I've seen this happen, especially in the fire service, probably when I first came in through a while, there were folks that were promoted for the wrong reasons. They were promoted based on maybe tenure, and seniority and stuff, or the book of certificates of meaningless classes they had taken. And we've talked about this, but
Yeah.
And so if you don't have any real confidence in yourself and you're not competent in your job, so let's say you're not competent in emotional intelligence, you're not competent necessarily in all your job functions or as a leader or as an engine boss, whatever it is, and then you have no confidence, how are you going to convince yourself to go have a conversation with someone about their performance or their whatever? You're just not. You're going to send an email with all caps instead and say, just do it because you don't want to get any pushback.
Yeah.
Where instead, if like you just said, if you're humble and you went into those conversations knowing you don't know everything, knowing that you're not a perfect and knowing you got stuff to work on and being open and honest about that and building that trust with someone, then you can have those conversations with people. But if you don't have that confidence or competence, you're not going to have those conversations because it's going to be so awkward and so uncomfortable. So you just don't have any of the conversations. So it's a circle of yuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I mean, me and you we talk about that competence and confidence and what that leads to. It leads to authenticity and composure and all that, critical decision making, leading during chaos, all that other stuff. So it's good. I like that you brought that up. And, for our younger listeners, if you see people, doing the things that we're talking about or, in all of that, they are missing something within the line of competence or confidence. And so how do we, it becomes, how do we, what's the word I'm looking for here? Justify or act like that's not real is you almost go above and beyond to make it look like you do know what you're talking about, or you be aggressive with your all caps emails or things of that nature. And when you're seeing
or
those,
you shut people down when they try to have a conversation or argue with you or like get more information or whatever, you just shut people down.
Right. And stand behind rank. Like you can't, right? That's insubordination. That's another one I love. It's like, really? We're adults.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy to me. So, they're probably lacking in something, whether it's the competence or the confidence or both. And that's really what it is. So if you're younger out there and you see that, try to examine like where they're lacking. And I'm not saying go approach that, right? But it's a learning opportunity for you. So to be able to visualize those things and then reflect on yourself, like, am I that way? Am I picking up the traits of this culture that I don't like? And how am I doing that? And how do I go the other way? So again, it's a good opportunity just to look and examine why these things are happening, where people are lacking. And if you could point that out in others, can you point it out in yourself? And then build and learn about technical communications and how effective leaders communicate. So it's a great learning opportunity for the young people out there to, if you're aware of these things, try to understand why they're happening. Don't just get mad. I get it. But use it as an opportunity for your personal growth.
Yeah. And I would say too, and that, man, this is going to push the boundaries, I think, but I would say have some empathy for them too, because imagine coming to work. I'm watching this happen at work right now with some folks. Imagine coming to work and knowing that you're not super great at your job and that people recognize that, and just have some empathy. Like, I know it is their responsibility to fix what they've got going on and to get better at what is their job responsibility 100%. And if they are trying to do that, have some empathy, because gosh, it would be hard to come to work knowing that you're really not doing a great job in certain areas. That's stressful. And that's probably a whole other mental health conversation that's going on. So I have to say that too, because I always try to take that into consideration when I'm butting heads with somebody. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes, and now, having these conversations with them is super tough. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. And you got to know, and every person.
Yeah, because there's stuff I am not great at work, and it stresses me out, and so I'm trying to always work on those things.
And beyond that, everybody, every single day, is battling a battle you have no idea about. And believe it, because it's true. There's no non-truth behind that. Everybody's battling a battle you have no idea, not a clue. I had a thought. It has escaped me.
So look, our listeners can't see this, but I have started putting this little white dry erase board right next to where we record. And then I just jot down things because they always leave my brain. And so then I remember what I wanted to say.
I do that too. This one was quick in and out.
Yeah.
It was too quick to write down.
Too quick.
I'm like, no, that was a good point. But I think it was something to have empathy for others. Oh, darn. I don't remember. I know it was, everybody's fighting a battle you have nothing about. Oh, I got it. Again, we're going to go back to our terminology that we throw around our industry. Brotherhood and sisterhood, right? And like, we claim we are those things, but yet we lack the basic human emotions to be a brother and a sister in empathy and compassion. So it's really sometimes it's just mind-boggling that you just look at this stuff and everything, and when people are lacking, it's more, how are we going to approach that? Again, as Carrie said, we're about raising standards. We're not about lowering standards. We're about raising standards, but we just think the approach needs to change in order to do so, because I think we're, in general, not progressing, I think, as we could be. And then especially in terms of communication, like, I just think it is always the number one thing on every after action report, every post incident debrief, everything. It is always communication. And like, we know it's a problem. So how are we fixing that? How are we actively fixing that, from fireground operations, dispatch operations, to within the four walls of the firehouse, to within your family structures? Like, how are you fixing that? And I understand the challenge. Like, you can implement a lot of the things that we are talking about, but if the other side isn't, like, that's going to drive you more crazy, because you're like, hey, I'm doing the work. I'm growing. I'm learning. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to be this, but the other side still isn't. It's like, that's going to frustrate you even more. But it's, again, it goes back to that personal growth, and how do you, build resiliency in yourself. So and it's like, especially, I want our younger people, as you continue to get older and get positions and promote up, like, you have an opportunity to really start changing things. But it's taking these lessons now and learning from them, and then implementing those strategies for sure. And we'll definitely get you far, because, like I said, we've identified one of the biggest problems within all emergency operations, and it's like, we do nothing to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Weird.
Yes. All right. Well, I don't even know how long this one is at this point. We were going to do a short episode tonight, y'all. So we're sorry. I hope you hung out for the end.
when Carrie gets fired up, that's a good one. From the beginning, it's like, how can we leave this?
That's funny. All right. Well, until next time, we thank you again for listening. And if you have any show ideas, stuff you want us to talk about, please let us know.
All right. We will see you next time on the Heat of Command podcast. As we wrap up another episode, this has been Kyle
And Carrie.
from the Heat of Command podcast.
Thank you, as always, for listening. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And as always, we love the feedback. Keep it coming.
See you next time.